So I promised in the last video I would show how to make a circle and stack books vertically and horizontally. I think it's going to be too much math and complexity for this video, so I'll just show the basic idea how to, the way I did it at least, and then like you can take it and do whatever you want with it. So the way I'm doing this here is with a iteration loop. I know there's a variable loop that does this automatically, like it stacks the previous numbers, but the way I did it, I used a iteration loop, so I had to make my own arrays, and then from those arrays I would just get the number and scale the objects and translate them based on the array information. So the way it works is in the let's just go here for a second. So you know how in a PCG element, like you have the execute with context and the iteration loop. So in the execute with context, I create a random array here and like a random numbers, and then I store them in an array. Then I go through them again, and then I stack them. I just add the previous to the next to the next, so that each book height can be added to the previous one. So book 1, then book 2, then book 3 is book 1 and 2, and so on. And that's how I keep adding more heights on top of each other. So that's it. So the number of iterations, number of books, just create a random value for each iteration, store that in an array. Then after that is complete, you run through it again, but this time I'm adding the previous iteration random numbers on top of the current, and again and again and again until this array is full of these correct heights. And then I use that information in the iteration loop body. I know it's messy, but where we need to focus on is, let's say, the scale of z and the location of z, and I just get from the iteration I'll get the I get the number I want from the array. Same with here. So scale, and it's just the same concept. It could be applied for any type of information, whether it's rotation or scale, position. I'm just using arrays with numbers. So yeah, I make them here. So the execution with context is the same as any other, but just before I do everything here, I start this another sequence before that, make some arrays, store them into like variables here, not local variables. Well, let's see, some of them are, but I tried to store them here, like do this type of setting in the iteration loop body. It doesn't work. It does not allow me to set new variables in the iteration loop body, so I had to set those arrays in the execute with context, then go to iteration loop body, use them here. And you could do this with anything. So I also did that with the circle. The one we were just looking at was this stacking vertically, but we can also take a look at the circle. So I usually copy 2 points and get the actor data with a single point, so that the origin would be where I place the PCG, not somewhere else. But if you've seen my previous video, you already know what this is. So I'm just going to keep going and just show you how to do a circle, because we just took a look at the stacking vertically. It's very simple. You, like I said, just random numbers and then stack them like by adding them to the previous, and then you could use them in the iteration loop body. You can add other variations, alterations, either flip it upside down, the array, just flip it reverse, I think, the function, randomize some more, rotations, or like reduce the numbers as you're incrementing higher and higher, certain like one direction more than the other. There's some like spiral stuff you could do with the rotation. You can play with it and play with the numbers and see what you can come up with. But let's take a look at the circle. And all of this, by the way, is already in the project. You can download it like in the link below or in the previous video. It was already there. I'm just gonna show you how to do this circle now. Okay, so circle, create circle. So we'll go in here and see what's up. Okay, so the execute with context, there is nothing here. I didn't have to initiate any arrays here, but in the iteration loop body, this is where everything is happening. So first, I'm just gonna remove the rotation, simplify it a little bit. We'll take a look at what's happening here, and then I'll add the rotation and see. Okay, so this is without rotation. You could see how the boxes are facing the same direction, but they're all in a circle, like they're position wise. So let's go back here. Okay, so first I get the iteration, and then it's the same number, but it's multiplied by some like exposed parameter, like to resample how many you need in a circle, how many boxes. But this aside, it's just a number that goes into sine and cosine, and multiplied by another number for radius. But the main concept here is any number that is you take a number and you sine that number, put that into the x, cosine same number, put that into the y, it'll create a circle. And then you can multiply it with another number like radius, and also another number before the sine and cosine, and you can expose some extra parameters to control the resampling of how many boxes, or the radius and like how wide the circle is. But the main concept is sine x, cosine y. That's how you make a circle with an array, or like a list of numbers. Okay, so how do I make them rotate towards the center? Like this doesn't look nice. Like I want them to face the center. So what I'm thinking is, what if I take every position that I made, which is I made them with like sine and cosine, but then for this box, let's say, I add one more iteration or previous one, and then I do the same, and then I make them look at each other. So I use the look at function. Where were we? Okay, here. So same logic here, like this, but you could see how I added an extra iteration, and I used modulus because like the last point in the circle will have nothing to look at because it's looking at a box that doesn't exist. So if you use a modulus, it looks at the previous. You don't. Okay, maybe I should explain that more, but that's just too much math for now. Okay, so same thing, sine and cosine, but make a vector from that and also make a vector from the previous. So now I have two vectors, and I just make sure they're looking at each other and plug that in here, and now they're facing the center point. Okay, and now we can use this, and I can copy, for example, the box that we were looking at before, and now we have this. Okay, now comes the most complicated thing, is this box pile thing, but there's an option here that turns it into like a book slanted thing. Okay, this is too much for one video and too much math, but I can show, and it's already there, you can dig in and play with it, but that's the main like math to find the distance between the position of each book and the other. First I define the book length, height, and all of that, and also the angles. So I create random angles, but then I have to figure out how far these books are from each other's, because unlike Houdini here, I cannot really like shoot out rays and calculate distances like that. So I had to figure out their location, size, and rotation prior to even creating them. So all of these and all that information already exists in arrays, like I was doing here with this like stacking vertically. I just created arrays. Those arrays contain all the information I need to place them. So I go back here, I go to the execute with context. These here, okay, so never mind this is not needed. Okay, so same thing with the execute with context. It's the same thing with the iteration loop body, but I added these things here, which are arrays. We start with the sequence first, do these first, store the information I need into arrays, and then use those arrays the way I need to place and rotate and scale the boxes so that they look like they're slanted books. Yeah. There's a switch here, one that does vertical and the other ones are horizontal. So these two are responsible for the books. And first I initialize some random arrays, and then I start stacking them on top of each other based on that like C1, C2 formula thing here. And once that's done, I go to iteration loop body, get each iteration and grab the information I need from it. One thing I added after, made sure that the rotation I made here affects the location, because if I try to do this, they would not rotate. They would just like face in a different direction. So adding this here helped with just following the pivot. Okay. Last thing really quick is I just wanted like to make a shelf generator thing that I can place the books in, which we can find here. Okay, so I'll just here. So from the previous video, we created a line. That line can expose those parameters, which you can find in the graph settings here. So the idea here, just create a line and then scale the boxes, and then so we can just see. And same with this on the sides. and these are the books. Books we already created before, but I just put them in the same PCG graph. And all of these math operations here, they're kind of linked to each other, so that if I scale one, everything else would scale with it. So let's just try something. Okay. So I go down here, and then let's say 6, and then it just creates more, or 3 creates less. So everything still like nothing new here. It's more like just figuring out the math. If this scales this much, how much should I multiply or subtract by the other numbers so that everything updates simultaneously. And this is how it, like, you can start making procedural, like in quotations, procedural placement things. Like you link numbers to each other so that things react accordingly. Everything is there in the project files. You can dig in and learn from it if you want. I think this will be all for this video. Next video, I'm gonna make something about UEFN. I started playing with that. I made a map. It's playable, and I'm gonna make a tutorial about it. If you're into, or you want to learn about UEFN, you can stay tuned. Should be out anytime soon.